It's what we call our noise signature, and you have your four props on the 130. A lot of times there would be guys like some missions we didn't shoot. We'd be overhead these like Marines, and like basically you could tell just the comms of the JTF, they haven't slept in days. And like, we would just orbit over them for about 4 hours, just our noise signature, and just to keep the enemy at bay, because especially the Taliban knew about the gunship, and they feared it, man. And they would hear that noise signature and stay away from the guys on the ground. And then there's the other aspect of that. If there's a tick, these guys been getting shot at all day, and before we even get there, they start hearing your props and they just start running and, scatter like bees. And that it's always chase that moment, man, to where they knew it was over, right? The enemy knew it was over.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this week's edition of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. Certainly appreciate you folks coming back every week. However, I know it's not about me. It's about the great guests I got on here. And nothing's changed. I got another outstanding guest today. We'll get to that in just a second here. I'm not sure if you're aware, but Game of Crimes also has a Patreon channel. There are several things on there, including there's 3 levels. At the top 2 levels, Javier, my old DEA partner, and I, we did a 12-episode interview with Morgan, who was my previous co-host here on Game of Crimes. It's the most extensive interview we've ever done about our careers and about the Pablo Escobar investigation. So if you're interested, come on over. It's patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Again, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. And that's it for the cheesy commercials for right now. So today's guest is another military hero, served almost 21 years in the U.S. Air Force, doing some stuff that you see on some of these games like Call of Duty, or you might see in war theaters. And I just want to bait you a little bit, because what he did is what I think young boys dream about doing at some point in their life. It's that exciting. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you would, welcome Anthony Dyer to the show. Anthony, brother, thank you so much for coming on Game of Crimes.
Thank you, Brother Steve. I appreciate you having me, man. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's an honor for you to give up your time and come on Game of Crimes. And for what you did for your country, it's the least I can do. My little payback, I guess we'd say. So to figure out how we met, this is the 5th year of Game of Crimes. And I get a lot of emails from people, publicists and PR people that are saying, hey, I've got this guy who wrote a book and he did this and he did that. And when I don't know people, I vet them. I don't just bring anybody on the show here. And a lot of those people get turned down. But when I heard about Anthony's story, I said, man, this sounds like something made for Game of Crimes. And so I talked to his publicist there, and I said, could you get me a copy of the book? Which the name of the book, believe it or not, is Moonchild. Now, it's a little more involved than that. And you see that pretty cool looking airplane on there? He had something to do with that too. So we're going to get into all that here. But normally, we usually have the small town police blotter. I really don't do that unless you're in law enforcement. So I'm not going to do that to Anthony today. And he's looking at me like, what the heck are you talking about, Murph? Well, don't worry about it, brother. We're not going to do it. But seriously, all listeners, thank you so much for coming back. So Anthony, the way, I wanted to mention your publicist. That was Eve Bailey at Flow Communications, FLO Communications. And she sent me the copy of the book. And it was just, when I started reading the book, if you like action type books and how people got into certain situations, this is one of them. You can see the size of it. It's small. I was joking around with Anthony before we started recording. I said, I got this thing in the mail. And I thought, I got a miniature book here. What am I going to do with this? But he's going to explain to us why it looks like that. Okay. And it took me a little over a couple hours to read it. But again, it's one of those books when you start, you can't put it down. So, all right, Anthony, listen, what we usually do is you'll tell us, if you would, tell us a little bit about your background. I'm talking about where you grew up, what your family dynamics were, your mom and dad, what they do, brothers and sisters, going to school, sports, that kind of stuff. So I'll just let you run with it here, man.
Yeah, so I grew up in a very, very small town in Silva, North Carolina. It's about an hour west of Asheville. I used to joke around saying you could, at the time, probably throw a baseball across my whole town. So very, very small community. And with that, everybody knows everybody's business. That can be either a really good thing or a really bad thing. You know how that goes. But yeah. And it's the sense of community was strong, and everybody had everybody's back. And there's a lot of Scott Irish descendant mountain people. Then there's also 20 minutes away, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Nation there. So sort of a melting pot of just a lot of different personalities and cultures, and a lot of really good food as well. And of course, moonshine played a big part in that area for years. Probably still does. Yeah. 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 But yeah, I went to Smoky Mountain High School as far as sports. Played my junior and senior year, the Smoky Mountain Mustangs there in Jackson County, North Carolina. And I get to the basically my 6 months from graduating high school there. My dad gives me the typical dad talk of, son, you're about to be an adult. It's time to either get a job, go to college, or get out. And college I wanted nothing to do with at the time. And then I started talking to I think it was like a Navy recruiter first, and he was like being on a boat for 6 months at a time. And then an Army recruiter. Then I was like, you know what, man, I'm going to talk to my dad about sort of the quality of life of Air Force. And he was at Tampa at one point. He was a communications guy long before I was born. But, you know, he talked to me about the, like I said, the quality of life of Air Force, and, you know, the TDY money and the golf clubs and good chow halls, right, and stuff like that. And so I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And July 18, 2000, there I was on my first fixed wing flight to San Antonio, Texas.
Wow. All right. So I want to back up just a little bit here with you. Your dad was in the Air Force before you were born?
He was.
Right?
Yeah, he was in, you know, the Vietnam time era there. He was a communications guy in the first combat communications squadron. As far as his Oconus or his stateside base, he was at Tampa MacDill Air Force Base there.
Yeah, nice place. I've actually been there when, well, it's the home of SOCOM now, Special Operations Command. So. And what did Mom do?
So my mom, she was a teacher for 30 plus years, actually. And she taught mostly first grade. And, you know, and it was one of those things, like I went to the same elementary school my mom taught at. So there was always this routine that would happen. I call it, you know, where I'd get in some sort of trouble, and they would, for whatever reason, they would take me to my mom's classroom first before the principal, you know. And honestly, like, they were looking at it like, what you get from her is probably worse than what you're going to get from this principal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, moms, they know how to get you, man. But yeah, it was sort of really closeness with my mom there. And if it weren't for her, you know, she gave me the best gift in the world. She believed in me, and in her prayers, you know, I tell people they followed me everywhere I went. So
outstanding. That's excellent. That sounds like a good mom right there. But I mean, your mom, that's what's going to happen when Dad gets a hold of you. Or at least I'm sure your childhood sounds a little bit like mine, where they didn't spare the rod.
Yeah. So there was always in the summers where Mom would be like, wait till your dad gets home, and I'd be talking crap until Dad got home, right? And then it was on.
Yeah. And it's for me, in those nights, I just wanted to go to bed early, like before he got home.
Yeah.
Did you have any brothers and sisters?
Yes, sir. I had a sister named Valerie, and she was actually the homecoming queen there in, I think it was 95, 96. Yeah, the Smoky Mountain High. And yeah, she still lives in the area of the mountains there to this day. So
good for her. My wife I think she was homecoming. I think so. And she's editing this, so I better get this right. If you happen to call and I'm sleeping in the doghouse, you'll know why.
Yeah, I've had a couple couch nights myself.
I think we're both still a work in progress, but I'm like double your age. You think I'd have learned by now. Did you play any sports in school?
I did. I played basketball just a junior and senior year. I was I'll say decent basketball player, you know. Yeah, I know I wasn't good enough to go to college, but you know, it at least kept me active, and I, you know, created some habit for me. You know, I remember we had actually a coach from New Jersey or something came down one time at a basketball camp, and I remember sitting there watching this man. He's sitting there shooting like 100 free throws, and that was his whole thing. He just wouldn't miss, you know. And basically, the point he was making was the key to success in anything in life is repetition. And you know, I thought about this naturally after I wrote the book, but to this day, man, he's so right, man. I think as aero gunners or SMAs, right, we're often creatures of habit, as they say, very checklist oriented.
Yeah. That's what'd you think about his accent when he came down?
Man, I couldn't understand half of it, to be honest with you, man. I'm sure he couldn't understand me. So, but he was a stern, just really good instructor, coach, you know, taught the camp there. And I just sort of wonder what he's doing to this day. I'd have to get his name again, but
yeah, very good. So when you came out of high school, you've got the three choices. Pick a choice from Dad, and you decide. You told me before we started that college just wasn't in the books for you. There wasn't any, and I know I've been to Waynesville, which is close to Sylvan, North Carolina. I used to teach at a law enforcement academy over there when I was a DEA agent in Atlanta. but there's not a lot of industry out there. It's more tourism, anything, right?
Oh yeah, and that, back then especially, I knew it was either like get a construction job, without having any education, anything like that, or But nowadays it seems like there's a brewery on every corner, some sort of mountain brew. But yeah, it was a lot of tourism. The Harrah's Cherokee Casino was built, I think I was in 7th, 8th grade, something like that, and that brought a lot of people up from Atlanta and Florida and New York, the whole East Coast essentially.
Yeah, yeah. So you go and you've joined the Air Force. Did you have any idea what you wanted to do in the Air Force before you joined?
I had no clue, and then I talked to this recruiter in Asheville. At the time, we didn't have an Air Force recruiter in Silva, and so being 6 months or give or take from graduating high school, I was on this program called the Delayed Enlistment Program, and at that point, I just knew I wanted to be in the Air Force. I didn't, have any idea what different jobs were, and he tells me something to the effect of, if you do this weapons loading job, you're going to be in the real Air Force. Okay, that sounds cool. I was like, does it have a bonus? He's like, yeah, $7,000. I was like, sign me up, so didn't think about it, didn't hesitate, just did it. And, like I said, then July 18th, 2000 happened, and summer went by quick, what little summer I had. And, next thing you know, I'm in 100-degree plus heat in there in San Antonio, Texas. So,
Jeez.
Yeah.
Had you been out of the mountains of North Carolina very much?
So the furthest I'd been from the mountains was I went to Myrtle Beach, a few times growing up, but that was it,
Well, in West Virginia, that's what everybody in West Virginia goes to Myrtle Beach for summer vacation. And in fact, you go there so much, they've created a state law that if you don't visit Myrtle Beach at least once a year, you lose your West Virginia citizenship.
Yeah, and I think it's opposite. Yeah, it's opposite too, because I'll see, in the summer more Florida tags and New York tags, like so the snowbirds come or whatever. I don't know why it is, but it's always the middle point meeting place for both places. It seems like in the summer. So
yeah, it's my wife and I spent a lot of time in Myrtle Beach. We haven't been there in, gosh, I don't even remember the last time we were there. I think our daughters, I'm not even sure they were in high school. They might have still been in junior high, but yeah, special place.
Oh yeah.
You got to go every evening to go cruising on the boulevard there. I guess they still do that. I might be dating myself a little bit too much.
Yeah, I think they probably still do that. And remember Benjamin's was at Calabash, that's like a $20 buffet at the time, man. I'd go there and just eat crab legs till I was sick,
Yep. Great seafood down there. That's the truth.
Oh yeah.
All right. Now, how did you get to San Antonio?
So I had to go to MEPS for like you're right before you leave, they basically give you a physical like no other, and have you duck walk, all these different things, and then you go through all these different, place to place to place in that little clinic there they had in Charlotte. And then, basically then you do the oath for real. At this point, there's no really turning back, so you just raise your hand, you'll take the oath of enlistment. And then, at that point you're in, and, man, that's real early morning. I remember leaving, there to go to San Antonio. I was really tired, and, right when you get off the bus there, you're just getting, bombarded, and you start thinking like, man, second guessing yourself, right? Wow, what am I doing? Right. Like, I miss that cold mountain air, but, in the end, I knew that if I wanted to, make a difference or leave some sort of footprint in the world, I was going to have to get out of, the small town I was at. So,
yeah. Yeah, and listen, everybody, I'm not giving small town people a hard time here. I am a small town people. But how did you physically get to San Antonio? Did you drive?
Oh yeah, it was an airline from Charlotte to San Antonio, and this was I think I put in the book there. This is my first fixed wing flight ever. My good friend when I was like third grade, give or take, Jessica Beasley. She actually her dad bought us a helicopter ride over in Pigeon Forge, and she actually just finished up 19 years of law enforcement herself, but proud of her for that. But yeah, she basically, we got that flight, and then we knew at that point, she actually came out to my retirement, that the aviation flying in some way, shape or form would take a big part of my life.
Absolutely. The first commercial flight I ever flew on is when my wife and I got married, and we flew from Roanoke to Miami to go on a cruise for our honeymoon.
Nice.
I'd been in private planes. I'd actually even taken flying lessons. And just when you take a flying lessons, one of the things they teach you is how to come out of a roll. Yeah. So you go up and you stall the plane, and you tip over, you start to spin, and the instructor says, don't spin more than 3 times. It'll rip the wings off the plane. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, you should have seen my face the first time we practiced auto rotations on the Pavehawk helicopter. It's part of training. First time we did that, man, one of my buddies had experience, my stick buddy. he saw my eyes. He's like, dude, I wish you could have seen your eyes, man. They were like that big, just free falling from 1,000 feet.
Oh, Lordy. Just the good man upstairs gives us all abilities and gifts. And I'm not sure I can hold that spin, because I tell you what, that was the last flying lesson I took after we did that. That just scared me to death. But so then I was mentioning we took our flight, and my wife knew when we were taking off on that jet, the speed they've got to build up to, and it's just exciting. That very first flight is just really exciting.
Well, oh yeah, I think it's what we call rotate speed, and you'll hear the pilot not flying say rotate, and then that's basically the command to pull back on the yoke where he's going to start going vertical. But yeah, I always looked at it, I compare it to an arena, especially in on the AC-130 gunship, and there was this point, where every flight I would show up and there was this door that had Old English on it. It said, "We who walk through these portals stand tall." And, no matter what I had going on in my life, man, and one of my instructors sort of taught me this, you just clear it out of your head and you perform. We always have a saying, it was called be an athlete, and that can mean many different things. But for an aviator, to me, like sort of what it meant was like, once those engines start roaring, they start turning, like it's game on, and you're in that arena, right? And so, your brothers and sisters on the ground and the guys and men and women you fly with depend on you, so that's what it was always about, just this, this group effort and this somewhat organized chaos fashion of, getting those rounds out for those guys on the ground. So
being part of a team.
Oh yeah.
I love that part.
Yeah. And I think that sense of purpose, that's a real thing when you get out and it's not there anymore. Just something I was always craving to be something a lot bigger than myself.
There's nothing wrong with that, and I like the adage that you're serving your fellow man. So whether you're a first responder, military, we call it military, but you're actually a public servant, just like anybody else that works for their government. And that means that you have chosen to serve the public. And a lot of people think that's a derogatory term. I don't. I think that's a badge of honor, because there's no greater calling than serving your fellow man. So that's
and I think that there's my favorite verse in there in the the Isaiah 6:8, the send me verse, right? It's very, to me, it's always very special operations military, even in law enforcement centric, right? Like, it's like basically when there's no one else to go, I raise my hand, for my brothers and sisters, Lord send me, and I'll get into that a little later about the first time I actually, what that meant to me actually when it really happened, but yeah, that was always that sense of purpose and that brotherhood and sisterhood. You'll always crave that even when you're out. So.
And when you retire too.
Oh yeah.
That was my biggest concern about retiring, was losing that camaraderie that goes along with, in my case, law enforcement. And luckily for me, between the Netflix show and the podcast and a couple other things that we're involved with, it keeps us connected to the law enforcement community. So you have to live vicariously through what everybody else does, but you still get to talk to the real studs and studettes that are out there. And that's why I have the show, is to bring you heroes on here. Let everybody hear the things that you've gone through, the sacrifices that you've made to protect them, to protect some of them sorry butts that hate you and they hate me. Yeah.
Yeah. You've seen a lot of your previous guests, and I'm sure, the gunship, some of those missions supported those guys a lot. There was always there's letters all around that squadron, the 16th Special Operations Squadron. We've basically got everything from Noriega's machete, and I think it says like Fueza de Panama in it, and then to like RPGs that we hit directly with a 40 million, that level of accuracies. But what I like the most, I would walk upstairs every day and I look at this letter from a Ranger, and he's 75th, and he's holding his baby girl, and he's basically saying thank you for the 16th SOS for your rounds. I got to go home to my family, and to me that's what it was always about. That was my reason for being, my sense of purpose. And, you don't think about those letters when you're young, but when you're older and you have a family, you look at those letters a lot different, and to me, it was a calling, I think physically, like, I realized I couldn't be like an operator, the water is a game changer in itself. Right. But what I want to do is provide that close air support for those super ninjas, as I call them, your SEALs, your Green Berets, your Rangers, and many nights, even just our noise signature, those guys got to even get some sleep because of it. But yeah, it was I loved every second of it, man. It was an awesome responsibility, and I loved it. So,
yeah, we want to remind me about that noise signature, because I want to talk about that a little bit later once we get into some of your missions, because I had never considered that, but it just made perfect sense. And the fact that these operators would take the time to send a letter to say thank you. I mean, when we were in Colombia, Jason Escobar and his organization, we got Delta came down from the U.S. Army, and DevGru or SEAL Team 6 came down from the Navy, and they were with us for 18 months. And Javier and I, we speak all around the world. We're going into our 11th year next year in 2026 of traveling. And we make no bones about it. If we're ever kidnapped, that's who we want to come and get us, because we worked with those guys. We lived with them. We've seen their capabilities. I would trust them with my life, literally. Just studs, man.
Oh yeah.
And you're included in that. Maybe you didn't go through the specific Delta or DevGru or whatever training, but you're right alongside there providing support. And that's what a team does. That's what teamwork's all about.
Oh yeah, and that's the 16th Special Operations Squadron. You belong, to USOCOM. And there's really, and I can get into it a little later too. But there's really, two types of gunship missions. And I remember 2011. You remember like an old school pager, right? Like we had pagers, believe it or not, and we were in Bagram, and some of those times those things would go off, and like it would mean like a troops in contact. And what I loved about, I don't know if I should love that about those, but I did, was like, when you're getting, so many miles away, you start picking up the guys on the sensors, the enemy, and they start running like bees, because, they hear the props, it's 4 fans of freedom. They know it's over. And that's something that you never get used to. And then when that JTAC gets on the horn, and he says, clear to engage, man, I chased that feeling for so long, that adrenaline, just that sense of relevance, that was, to me, that was everything in the world, was getting that close air support for those guys. Then there was the other side of those missions where they send you another code on a beeper, and like it means something. And basically, like there's direct action stuff going on. Those guys are going in there, and next thing you know, they're bagged and tagged somebody, threw him in a helicopter, and he's gone to God knows where at that point. But yeah, it was really those two types.
Oh yeah, I love what you just said there. The 4 fans of freedom. That's talking about the 4 propellers, and I'm sure our listeners have figured out by now. We're going to talk about the C-130 gunships. I mean, oh man, I've never even seen one up close. I'd love to see one of those. It just, you see the pictures and it's just massive. And I mean, you remember the old Green Beret movie that came out, I think back in the 70s. You probably weren't even born yet, but I think John Wayne was in it. Yeah. And they had Puff the Magic Dragon come in to lay fire on the forward base there. You're just thinking, oh my gosh, that's massive. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's had many names over the years. What was cool about the H model Spectre gunship was I got to fly on the same airframes that tail number 6972. So the same skeleton structure, if you will, of the ones that flew in Vietnam, shooting up the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And that's where when the 105 would go off, it leaves, especially if you're looking at it in the daytime, it leaves a cloud of smoke and the plane goes forward. So it looks like the gunship's smoking, and that's where they get Puff the Magic Dragon from. It's been called that, the Angel of Death, God's Right Hand, so many different comparisons. So
I think one of them was Wicked Wanda. Was that one of them?
Wicked Wanda, yeah. It was. There's a picture in the book there, taking some gas. We're about to bingo fuel. We're hitting the tanker there, getting some gas with Wicked Wanda. So I think it was tail number 72. I think that was my favorite one to fly on. So.
Wow. Okay, well, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, because I know when you went through the Air Force training, where's your first post and what was your assignment?
So at this point, I wasn't a flyer yet. I was, my first post was Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. I was what you call a weapons loader. And, basically what that is there's a 3-man crew. You have usually a sergeant, then you have 2 guys under him. We were airmen, and, you would load, but at that time I was loading the F-15 Strike Eagle, fighter jet with, bombs and missiles. And, I'd been there roughly just a year and some change. And that's when 9/11 happened.
How much do those missiles weigh? You see them rolling them out on the carts there.
So the missiles, I think an AIM-9 was roughly 300 pounds. So you got 3 people putting it up on the rail, loading it. But some of those bombs we would use, they call us load toads, because it was basically this hydraulic lift truck where you'd lift these 2,000-pound bombs sometimes with hydraulics, and you'd stick your legs out, you look like a frog, and you load it into the brew rack and lock it in there. But yeah, so that's why it's called load toad. So
yeah. Everybody gets a name, don't they?
Oh yeah. Everybody's got an acronym or name or call sign.
Oh, I love it. Mine was, when we were in Colombia, the Colombia police had a hard time saying Steve. It came out as Steak. Yeah. And so translated comes as stick. I joke around. I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a damn stick.
Gotcha.
But everybody, you're right. Everybody had a street name.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of it's just the camaraderie that goes along with being in the same dangerous situations time and time and time again.
Oh yeah, and I tell people. So in AFSOC, we didn't really do call signs, but when I went to the rescue helicopters, that's where I got my Uncle Tito call sign there. And, usually when you're getting a call sign, it's never anything good. It's not for anything good you've done. It's usually something embarrassing or, something you don't want a lot of people to know and you did. Yes. Yeah. The whole naming ceremony.
I noticed in the book that you kind of skimmed over that, said you don't want to talk about that. I'm just guessing it might have something to do with a Tito's vodka.
Well, so I'll just go ahead and tell you the story if you want me to.
Yeah.
I don't mind. Yeah. So we were, at this point, I was on the rescue helicopters, and what would happen, we had what you call spin up training. And basically you would have 2 weeks of what you call hard crew. So your pilot, co-pilot, and then your other special missions aviator that you're going to fly with downrange. You get 2 weeks together. You're doing all these different scenarios. You're doing hoist, fast ropes, aerial gunnery, where you're shooting 360 firing fans at Avon Park, Florida is where it was. And, but when you were on the planning cycle of that, like if the other flights were deploying and you were playing the Op 4 guys, the bad guys, or the survivor, and what would happen the first day I was there, one of my buddies, he had a Smirnoff ice. Remember the tall Smirnoff? And when you would say it was getting iced, like if someone basically you hide it and if they see it, they have to get on one knee and shotgun it. So he got me with one, and then we're on this range and everything's getting ready to end up. And so I was like, man, I'm going to get a bunch of these. And I'm going to get him back. And so what happened was I put him in places where I thought he would look, and then I would forget that I put him there, and I got myself. So I kept icing myself, and then I was like, oh, what an unfortunate chain of events. And I'd ice myself again and again. Next thing you know, I'm smashed, right? And so the acronym they came up with was Tony ices Tony only. So Uncle Tito was the call sign they gave me after that. So like I said, usually nothing good, but it's funny looking back at it.
Well, honestly, that's part of the camaraderie. My wife says, as guys, we never grow up, and that's probably true.
Oh, yeah.
She hears me get on the phone with some of my other law enforcement friends, especially the guys out in San Diego, and she's like, you guys sound like a couple little girls in there on the phone.
Yeah. I've been told to grow up still to this day from my wife, so I know the feeling.
Yeah, me too. And we've been married 41 years, and she's still telling me to grow up. You'd think at some time you'd listen, but probably not. Probably not. Now, so you got in the military in 2000, and then September 11th comes along in 2001. How or did that impact you as a person and your career, and what did you do?
Yeah, so at that time I was a weapons loader, and I was working the mid shifts, what we call. I believe it was like midnight to 7 or something or 11 to 7, like that. So I was just going to sleep, and I don't remember if it was, 9 o'clock ish, give or take 8 or 9. My buddy was beating on my door in the dorms there. We live in dorms. And he said, hey, Dyer, have you seen what happened? I was like, no. And at this point, the first plane had already hit. And so we went to a common area, what we call a day room. And back then, it was just a tube style TV that maybe had 3 channels, one of those being like AFN. And of course, it was all over the news, and that time the second tower hit in. And I just remember thinking, like, man, like, it's a certain rage I've never felt before, you find out that many people died. And I also thought about, the 343 firefighters and the police officers that ran in that building that day. Like, what's different in their DNA? Like they're running towards this instant death essentially. And, when everyone else is running away, to me, that was I wanted to be, something like that calling, and which led to my second job a little later I'll get into, but as an Air Force firefighter there at Charleston Air Force Base.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we had on episode 204, Will Hamino, who was a Port Authority police officer that ran in the building, in the towers. And then he and his team, the towers collapsed on them, trapped, I think, for 15 hours before they finally were able to rescue him and his sergeant. Several of his team members didn't make it out of the building. But to listen to his story, it just, even thinking about it now, I'm getting goosebumps just sitting here talking about him.
Oh, yeah.
Ended up permanently disabled, had only been on the job, if I remember correctly, I'd only been on the job 4 months. But you're right. That's what separates the heroes from everybody else is, when things like that happen, everybody's running away, but the heroes are running towards the gunshots or the explosions or the fire or whatever it is. Then that's what makes them heroes in my book.
Oh, yeah. That's those men and women that they'll always hold a special place in America's heart, I think, because that ultimate sacrifice. And at this point in my career, things like duty, honor, service before self. Like they were just words to me at this point until later to actually witness what those words meant. And when you see that sacrifice, you realize like that is our nation's very best. Like John 15:13, the greater love hath no man in this, and a man lay down his life for his friends. It's a very powerful verse. And those men and women, they live by that. Even if they heard that verse or not before, they live by that code. And I always will look up to those guys at 343, the policemen as well, and all the servicemen and women that's shed blood on foreign soil to this great nation. So,
man, freedom is not free.
That's definitely true.
Lordy. I'm getting goosebumps here talking about all this.
Sorry.
So now you changed your MOS then after 9/11, right?
Yeah. So I did as soon as I could do it, I did 5 years, give or take, as a weapons loader. And then 2005-ish, I went to the Air Force or DoD Fire Academy there in Shepherd Air Force Base, Texas. Forgot what town that is, but yeah, it was basically, they had the Intel school there. Then they had the DoD Fire Academy, which you had Marine instructors, Army, all the DoD had civilians there with us. And it was a pretty, physically at that point, probably been the hardest thing I'd done in my career, And, but yeah, it was, really an awesome feeling when you get to put the wet stuff on the hot stuff, as I say, and you become really close with the firehouse with the men and women you work with. And pranks is a big part of that, all that fun stuff. But we had the best time. But what people don't realize about firefighting in the military, it's a good thing, is like everything's usually so fire safe. May have saw like 3 good structure fires the whole time I was doing that job.
Where did, when you came out of the fire school, where were you stationed?
I was at Charleston Air Force Base, South Carolina. Right now, I believe it's called Joint Base Charleston, because they combine like the Navy with it.
Nice place to be stationed.
Oh yeah. I had no complaints. A lot of shrimp and grits. It was a schedule that was awesome. Remember the old Kelly Day schedules where you would do like 24 on, 24 off, and then every 2 weeks you get 3 days off. And me and my buddies, we were friends. We all had Tuesdays, and he had this thing. He had his own bar in his house, and man, we were wild, man. I remember there was this other guy we worked with, man. He just had an explosive temper. I'll never forget. And we would do pranks, like we would call the Pizza Hut or whatever and order like 10 pieces, and like we would watch through the window when that guy would show up at that guy's house. Man, he just explosive anger. I'm not paying for this, F you. So just random stuff like that. Always found a way to have a good time.
Oh, that brings back memories. We had. Oh, I probably shouldn't tell this, but it's been a long time. This was back in the 70s. We had one officer who was just a royal pain, just like you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And he woke up one morning and found like 2 tons of, I don't know, gravel or dirt had been delivered in his driveway that he had not ordered. And then another time he started getting all these girly magazines, and he had not ordered those either. I had nothing to do with it. I just heard about it. I might have had a little to do with it. I don't know.
And I'll be honest, like some of those pranks I started putting in a book there, like I learned a lot of those in the fire department, man, because you're in there 24 hours with each other. I remember one time they got me, man. It was basically like what they did was they faked the call on the intercom in the middle of the night, and they put saran wrap over my doorway, and they'd put like honey and like all kinds of stuff, and waking up running, I was like, I mean, you learn so much stuff like that in that world. It was a blast. I loved it.
Oh my goodness. So, if things like that offend you, you don't want to be a part of that team, because when people find out it bothers you, it's going to increase.
Oh yeah, it's like blood in the water with sharks, man. They just sit there and just poke at you.
Oh Lord. Oh, that's funny. And I thought of another one. I mean, I'm not going to tell all these stuff on myself, because we're here to talk about you. It's okay for you to tell stuff on yourself.
Yeah, sorry, a little sidetrack, but yeah, it was pranks was a big part of that world. In the military in general, honestly, yeah.
Then it is in first responders too. They.
Oh yeah.
I was on the rescue squad in the town where I was a city police officer back in the 70s, and they caught me out in the ambulance bay one day, and a bunch of guys tackle you and they tape you up, and they got my hands behind my back and my ankles taped together, and then they bend my knees and they tape my ankles to my wrists. And I'm a little bit claustrophobic. If I can see a way to get out, I'm okay. But if I feel like I'm trapped, I have a hard time with that. And it was all fun until that little bit of anxiety and panic set in. and I got real quiet, and I guess I got that death look or something, because they're like, oh crap, cut him loose.
Even the finny flies, man, they'll chase you down. You always try to fight back, but like there's so many people, and they think you're duct taped in the back of some bed of some truck getting water and flour and everything else.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Whew. Okay. So, but that wasn't, you didn't remain a fireman all that long, did you?
It was roughly again another 5 years, and then in 2010, sort of what happened there. And this was the biggest probably pivot in my life. And I'm home on leave, and I'm at that pizza parlor there in Silva, and I don't even know if it's still there, but I look out and I see the same cracks in the road, and I'm with some friends, and I was like, man, I realized sort of the global war and terror. I've sat on the sideline at that point, if I was being honest with myself, and I was like, man, I don't want to leave cracks. Like, I want to leave craters. And at that point, I got back to the firehouse, and there was again, that Isaiah 6:8 verse. There was a book by Dick Couch called Chosen Soldier, and talks about the 12-man Green Beret teams and the training they go through, and basically the whole reason for what they do. And that send me was at the front of that book, the Isaiah 6:8 verse. And like, this was before the movie Fury and all that. It came out and made it more popular, but that really struck a chord in me where I was like, man, I want to make a difference. I want to quit sitting on the sidelines. And if I want to leave craters, the best way to do that would be to join the mighty 16th Special Operations Squadron here at Cannon Air Force Base and fly on the mighty AC-130 gunship. And craters, we definitely got our opportunities to do that and then some. So I was very thankful that God and the Air Force gave me the opportunity to serve, at the highest capacity, at least that I could.
So in the military, they've spent a lot of money training you to be a loader, and then they spend a lot of money to train you to be a firefighter. Now they're going to spend more money to train you for another occupation. Do a lot of people transfer around different occupations like that? I guess it alleviates boredom.
Yeah. So a lot of people retrain once, but it was very rare, especially at the time to retrain twice. And there was this program called the NCO Corp retraining program, and it was competitive, they go back through all your records, all that stuff like that. And then, my uncle flew on my great aunt's husband, I guess I'd make him my uncle technically, but he flew on the H model gunship. And, I talked to him. I was like, sir, like I really want to quit sitting on the sidelines. I want to make a difference. And I don't know if he phoned a friend or something to help me out a little bit there, but it definitely got the job after that. And, it was about a year of training before you even touched the aircraft,
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Another question: when you joined the Air Force originally, did you intend to make a career out of it, or was it just like a stepping stone to see what came along?
Yeah, I guess in my mind, looking back at it, I was buying myself time because my dad sort of gave me that ultimatum of get a job, go to college, get out. And I'd had no intention to stay 20 years. To be honest with you, I don't know too many people that when they first get in, they're like, oh, I'm going to do 21 years. If they do, probably get them checked out and something may be wrong. But the more you stay in and do it, and you're getting that steady paycheck and all the free healthcare, all that stuff, that helps. But at the same time, your friends you make in the military, like what I loved about it, I call them, I've made my 4 quarters, not 100 pennies. And that's a saying I got. And, when it comes to friendship, I actually used that analogy the other day to explain it to my daughter. Basically, you surround yourself with these great men and women, iron sharpens iron, and you don't want to leave that community and that sense of purpose.
Right. I understand completely.
Oh yeah.
Now, where do you have to go for your training to fly on a C-130 gunship?
We start off, ironically, I went back to San Antonio, Texas, and it was the Medina Annex, a little connection to Lackland Air Force Base there. And I went through aircrew fundamentals, which was about a 2-week course where you're going over weight and balance, takeoff and landing data, just basic like lift, what's drag, all these different, flying terms and stuff like that. And then you go to basic aero gunner school, which was in the same place. And but that one was a very, very basic overview of like, hey, you could operate, this is the 40 millimeter Bofors cannon, this is the 105 howitzer. And if you were going to helos, they had, the minigun and the GAU 18 50 cal. And you would learn those weapons, the very, very basics of not cycle of option like that, but basically learning their capabilities, if you will. And then at that point, you go to Fairchild, Washington for three and a half weeks of the SEER training. And that's survive, escape, or survive, evade, resist, escape is what that stands for, the SEER school. And basically, I tell people it's the best training I ever had in my life, but I never want to do that again, Yeah. I had one ab after that 3 weeks, probably the most shape I've ever been in my life. But you're out there in the woods with the SEER instructor for 3.5 weeks, and you learn how to survive and a few other things. And then you go to a water survival school back then it was in Pensacola, Florida, the Naval Air Station there. And what that was a very basic. They would parasail you up 1,000 feet, and then they would wave these flags, and you would disconnect like you're parachuting down. And then it was honestly, it was a good time back then. But you'd go into the ocean, then you have to blow up your little boot life raft and survive for 4 hours. I remember I was some navigator or something, man. I look over and we're in the Gulf, and they got tiger and bull sharks out there, and they make you watch Shark Week a lot of times before this stuff. And yeah, and so I'm not really a strong swimmer as it is anyway, but like they did that. And then I look over and this guy, they had a little fishing kit, and it was basically like a reel, and it had like a little silver, like a spinner. Uh-huh. And this guy's casted for fish. And I said, hey man, we got to survive like 4 hours, bro. It's not that serious, man. Here's a Snickers. Here's a protein bar. We're going to be all right. Cause I didn't want him to create that blood and these sharks come up and stuff. But yeah, it was all that training. And then I get to finally what was then the 551st Special Operations. It was a training squadron here at Cannon. And, then there's about 3 or 4 months of academics before I could even touch the gunship and do a pre-flight.
Well, you mentioned in your book that math was not a strong suit for you in school, but this involves some math, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I failed geometry the first time I took it. I had to retake that one, but especially looking at it now, vector is an angle. I may have knew what an obtuse and acute angle is, but that's about it. Right? But now, especially, there's a lot of math you have to do as an aviator, and a lot of quick math. So they teach you how to do that, and then I was always fine with a calculator anyway. So speaking of teachers, though, I did have, there's a part in the book there, like way before this, where, I had a teacher. She was like, basically, you're never going to make a living looking out a window. And I just thought, every time I would fly and I would scan on the AC-130 gunship, looking out a window, making a living, right? Doing, in my opinion, the best job in the world, like clapping back, as they say, but, yeah, I always thought about that every flight.
That's very true. In fact, one of the chapters in there is making a living. I think it might be is that your first chapter?
Yeah, one of the first few, I think.
Yeah. You can't make a living when looking out a window.
Yeah.
So you've been through all this training now, and I'm going to guess part of it is they actually take you up in the 130 and you get to do some practice shots and things like that.
Yeah, Steve. So I'll paint a picture here for you. So my first flight on the AC-130H model Spectre gunship, it went so bad, man, to where the instructor said something to the effect of like, "You're the reason they have to brief seatbelts on airliners." Yeah. So he told me that, right? We joke, me and him joke about it to this day, but really good guy. But he told me that. Then, so he sees me licking my wounds towards the end of the flight. We didn't even get to shoot because there's like range conditions and stuff like that. We didn't get to shoot, and he sees me like, I was being dumb, feeling sorry for myself. And he said, "Hey man, what's the most important word in the dictionary?" And I was like, "Man, I don't even know where I'm at right now. I have no idea." Perseverance, and he's like, basically, I want you to think about what that word means to you, and you show up, next flight ready to fight and get back in it. But basically, those guys want to be able to trust you with their best friend's life. Is the way I describe it. And next flight, I thought about what he said, and I showed up, and that was the first moment where the pilot whips this perfect orbit around the target here at Melrose Range, and I think it was like a tank or something like that. And the 105 recoiled, up to 49 inches, and the plane moves a little bit, and I just grinned, man. I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is so much firepower at your fingertips, So I want to do this for the rest of my life.
Okay, so let's go over that just a little bit. The 105 millimeter howitzer is basically a cannon that will shoot a missile how far on land?
I mean, we could shoot, so basically, I guess like the danger close mission, you know what I mean? Let's say it's like 300 meters, right? Like from like basically where a guy on the ground is, from like where he could be like considered in danger, right? Or something like that. I don't know if it's 300. I'd have to go back and look at it, but basically like you can shoot up. That's how far it would make an impact. You know what I mean? And we're shooting this from way up in the air, man, like a couple miles up in the air, something like that. But yeah, it's a very tried and true. But basically, if you put a BMP-1 tank and you hung it on the side of a C-130, right? And basically you're firing this cannon, like you said, a tank cannon from a cargo airplane. And it recoils up to 49 inches, and the whole plane shifts a little bit like that in the orbit. It's just an awesome feeling. I know it doesn't sound like much, but we can do 10 rounds per minute. But you can imagine being on the other end of that. That's a lot of hate coming at you at once.
The whole fact that it moves the airplane in the air when it fires.
Yeah, it was.
If the cannon recoils 49 inches I'm guessing into the fuselage, right?
Yeah, so there's basically a safety cage that will extend down, and like the end of that, like as a gunner, you'd be watching it like okay, here's 49 inches, right? So usually you'd get 43 inches about average. But if it got back to that point, we'd have to shut it down because there was something wrong with it. And you don't want it to, like you said, come all the way out and you go out the other side of the aircraft type thing. It's a safety thing, a warning written with that. But yeah, it was an awesome sight to see when you get back then 13 crew members all working together and you're getting 10 rounds per minute out on this thing, all 4 gunners on it, just knowing somebody's receiving that hate, man. Like that's caused your brothers on the ground harm, right? To me, that's what it was all about. And what an AC-130 gunner, where they really make their money at is weapon analysis and getting the gun back online. Back then it was a 40 mil and 105 for me. Now it's like they have the 30 mil and the 105, and there's STBs like a bomb truck type thing. And I know that sounds simple, but you can imagine some Green Beret team getting lit up on the ground. You can't figure out what's wrong with your 40 mil. You don't want to be that guy. So we took a lot of pride in being the weapons experts of the crew. And unconventional warfare, and even I extend it to the air as well. You're never out of the fight. You never want to call that gun down because somebody needs that close air support. And there'd be times where like the firing cylinder would go out on the 105, and we would tie the like a 550 cord, some parachute cord to it, and operate the firing pawl, pull it on the ready fire call from the sensor. You're never out of the fight. So there's that thinking with that, and you almost turn into like a flying artillery guy. And we'd leave these missions often with like a bunch of coal miners. So I love that work part of it.
Yeah. But I want to go back to 105 a little bit more.
Yeah.
If the cannon recoils up to 49 inches back into the plane, how far does it scoot that C-130 when it goes off?
I think it's like roughly 10 degrees, which is not much in the orbit, like that as you're shooting. So you'll definitely notice it
a little bit.
Yeah, it goes like, like you're flying in this orbit. So if I can demonstrate here, so it's like boom, a little bit, boom. So you're going further a little bit out each time. So, and wow. the pilot, he's always basically getting what we call rate and coincidence. Like he's flying this pylon turns, what it's called. And there's these different math, ironically, that goes into a lot of that, the trainable box limits and all this other stuff. But yeah, it's an awesome crew concept weapon.
And you said that you could go as many as 10 rounds per minute?
Yeah, and some guys could get more, but there was a basic limitation to where, like, I think it was like 4 to 10 rounds per minute up to a maximum of 30 rounds. And at that point, we'd have to let the gun tube cool, like the barrel, if you will, to ambient temperature before we could shoot anymore. And that was the reason is it can get so hot where you could have a cook-off, a round cook-off. Like I don't know if you remember Jockey 1-4 back in I think they were in Somalia back in Somalia. They were throwing Mark 25 flares out, in the ocean out there, and they were tweaking on, basically lining their sights with that, and it heated up the barrel to where like they had an inboard detonation, which I think they ran like 16 emergency procedures, lost half the crew out there. But yeah, it was and that's the whole reason you have to let it get to that ambient temperature so you can keep shooting,
Oh my gosh! But so that's every 6 seconds you're firing a round out.
Yeah, and it was. I got to fly with these older gunners one time, and I remember like it was like they had 4 rounds in the air at the same time is what it felt like. They were just that like not stronger than anybody, not really anything like that, just technique, and just they've done it so many times, and it gets back to that. The key to success in anything I think is repetition.
So, how long does it take that round to get from the plane to the ground? I know it depends on what your altitude is, but
yeah, a few seconds. I mean, there's definitely a little bit of a delay. You'll notice, like boom, it'll go off impacts. So it's like not a very instant thing, but there is a somewhat delay in that.
And when that fires at nighttime, I'm sure it shoots flame out the side of the cannon or out the end of the cannon.
Oh yeah. You'll definitely call them boomers. You'll definitely notice it. If you're on the ground, and with that though, the golden rule in gunshiping is like when you're shooting, expect to be fired upon. So like, a lot of especially with like ISIS, man. I remember we were flying over these guys and we were shooting, man, and like all of a sudden you look at the 6 o'clock of the aircraft, man, you'd see like these, beach ball size air bursts come up at you, and but what they would do at that point is they commit suicide because we could do a point of origin with this IR sparkle. You can see your NVGs, and we just blow them off the map at that point when they shoot at us for, self-defense REs and stuff like that.
That's when you look at them and say, shame on you.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
Yeah, I never understood. Like ISIS, they were really dumb at first, man. I remember they'd go to like these 4-way interway sections and wave these black flags. We actually got one in the squadron, and we would just back then when we first went in there, it was Type 3 control, which basically you'd have a JTAC with some general or somebody saying, "Yep, that's hostile intent," or "He's positive ID this," and you're cleared to engage. And we just once they did that, like I said, it was suicide. And then they got smart, and they started putting tracers in the surface air fire, the AAA and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a hard fought battle. But at the end, man, the gunship, in my opinion, was the reason that ISIS is mostly defeated.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, this is exciting to learn about all this. So now you've got the 105, but you've also got a 40 millimeter, was that similar to a grenade launcher, right?
Not really. So it was basically a Navy gun at the time. It was a 40 mil Bofors cannon, and what they did was they took an aircraft, again a AAA piece, and now we're hanging it on the side of a gunship, and it would come in a clip of 4, and you're rocking these things in at 60 to 100 rounds per minute. But yeah, it was usually the high explosive incendiary rounds, and if you wanted somebody on fire, then that would do it. So.
Just, how much armament can you guys carry on a C-130? I mean, you're up there for hours now. You can refuel. You get refuel, from the KC-10s, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. So, like, I think the 130, why it's often preferred for the close air support is the loiter time, like you mentioned. We can refuel, and it's the amount of ammunition with deadly accuracy, hours upon hours. And I think I did one mission that was like 11.7. We had to hit the tanker twice, and I was so beat after that. But yeah, it's at that time. So we had 125 105 millimeters. Now they have 80, and then so there's these different rounds in the 105. You have a high explosive point detonate, then you have high explosive delay, which would be like to go through a structure or something like that. Then you have the proximity rounds, and that thing was my favorite round, man. It's give you a shotgun type effect. Let's say you had 8 guys out in the open, Afghanistan or wherever, and you put the prox round in there, and it would detonate above them, and it would send like 14,000 .22 size caliber and just shred them. So you get multiple guys at once with that shotgun, that mass disbursement, if you will. Yeah, and then nowadays it's like 1,030 mil, and then they have 80 105, and then there's STBs on the wings and Griffins on the tail of the cargo, which you see the cargo ramp on a 130.
What's STB?
So small diameter bomb. It's about 250-pound bombs, and they put them on the pylons of the wings there, between the 3 and 4 engines there. And it's really turned into somewhat of a bomb truck. And I'll be honest, Steve, I was biased at first coming from a traditional H model gunship, but the first time I seen what those bombs could do, man, I was like, man, this is incredible. You'll be looking at your MVGs, and you'll see like 3 or 4 come off the brew rack at a time for the SDBs, and you're like, man, this is wild, man, like what it's turned into.
Are those considered smart munitions, or are they dumb bombs?
Oh yeah. I mean, some of those are like, could be laser guided, some could be GPS guided.
Jeez. So somebody's got to be on the ground pointing that laser, right?
Yeah. You can, what we call buddy lays, like a combat controller or somebody on the ground could lays one of the munitions, and then and you can even do that with other aircraft if you had to, and buddy lays for each other. But nowadays we have a combat systems officer and a weapon system officer, and those are the guys that are usually lasing it in and stuff like that by themselves. So,
do they have the miniguns or some kind of machine gun, like a 50 cal or something on there as well?
No, so the U model Spooky, the guys in actually Florida, at one point they had the 25 mil, which that's another awesome. The Gatling gun was an awesome munition. I just saw videos of that one, man. But I think they could cover a whole football field in like a minute. Is what was advertised. So.
Jeez, I remember. I think it came from that movie, The Green Beret, where the Puff the Magic Dragon comes in, and they were saying that it puts a round in every square inch.
Yeah. It's definitely a lot of firepower in a very quick time.
I love the part too where you're talking to the other crews of the regular C-130, and what did you tell them if they started taking fire?
Yeah. So there was always this rivalry, man. Like the C-130s, we would call them like 4-fan trash cans or something. They'd be like, oh, you guys are like NASCAR with guns. There was this pissing contest really for no reason but fun. Yeah. We was like, hey man, like if you guys are getting shot at, just start doing a left-hand turn. You'll be all right. Man, they get mad about that. Yeah.
And for those that don't know, the guns are on the left side of the C-130 Spectres.
Yeah.
Right. I loved it when I read that. I just started laughing. Oh man.
Yeah, just constantly like we would tag other aircrafts, they would tag us with stickers and stuff like that. But
yeah. There's we want to get into some more stories here. I'm amazed at the ingenuity of the American military people to come up with a weapon like this. I mean, you talk about something on your side. Oh, I
Oh,
just
yeah.
can't imagine something better. And I want to mention too, you talked about the noise reassurance for, and tell us a little bit. And I know I'm not getting the term right that you referred to, but just
Yeah,
quickly tell us
yeah.
about that.
It's what we call our noise signature, and you have your four props on the 130, and a lot of times, like, there would be guys, like, some missions we didn't shoot. We'd be overhead these, like, Marines or something like that. And then, like, basically you could tell, I mean, just the comms of the JTF, they haven't slept in days. And, like, we would just orbit over them for about 4 hours, just our noise signature, and just to keep the enemy at bay, because especially the Taliban knew about the gunship, and they feared it, man. And, they would hear that noise signature and stay away from the guys on the ground. And then there's the other aspect of that, of, like, if there's a tick, these guys been getting shot at all day, and before we even get there, they start hearing your props and they just start running, and, scatter like bees. And that it's, I always chase that moment, man, to where, like, they knew it was over, right? The enemy knew it was over, but in all be all, you got guys going home to their families because of, that close air support. And that, to me, that was my why for so many years, and I still miss that feeling.
Yeah. If you've never experienced this, it might sound a little bit hard to understand, but once you do experience it, it's something you chase for the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah.
And, again, my wife just thinks I'm an idiot, which she's probably right, because I'm talking to my buddies almost every day, bringing people in like you that I've never met before, and get to listen to your stories. And I get excited about reading the stories. And she and I, the kids are all grown and gone. And when nobody's around, we'll go out and have lunch or dinner together. And if, like today, we'll probably have lunch after our interview, and she'll have to listen to me talk about you for a while. I get excited about this. I love it. I love doing all this stuff.
Yeah. And the brotherhood and sisterhood aspect of it, that's everything to me. I think I may have mentioned this yesterday to you, but when you out process the Air Force, and I don't know if many branches like this, but you go to this place, some personnel flight, right? And you're filling out everything for your DD 214. And basically that's the document that says you retired honorably and all this stuff, right? And you walk out that door the last day in uniform, and you look, and there's not a door handle on the other end of that door. And you realize, man, all that for this. And so it's like, to me, like, that was my greatest purpose in life. That was that sense of identity. There's a lot of veterans, you see how people struggle with that when they get out, because it's like the opposite of Hotel California. You can leave, but you can't really get back in. But in a way, I had to get over myself too, and be like, okay, this machine goes on, this Air Force goes on without me. But what I can do is, that's when sort of the idea of, I came certain about writing the book. And we're all normal men and women doing very uncommon things. And I think it's good for America not to lose sight of that. And if someone gets help reading this book, then to me, that'd be a blessing. And that was really why I wrote it.
Excellent. And I kind of felt that way too when I left DEA. I'd been a cop 38 years, 26 with DEA. And I thought, DEA is going to fold up when I leave. And lo and behold, here we are all these years later, and they're still in business.
Yeah. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's just the level of service in our brain. We think like that, like this thing's going to just stop. But I literally thought that forever. But what gets you is, like, when it's over and that the smoke and the dust settle, what am I going to do to make a difference? What is my purpose now?
Excellent. I love it. Listen, Anthony, we've been going for, we've been going right at an hour here. And it seems like we just started. This has got me amped up talking about the C-130s and the bravery that's required, because you're a flying target. I mean, and that sounds ridiculous because you're in a war zone, but I mean, people know if they take a C-130 down, you talk about a badge. Holy cow. That'd be a big deal.
Oh yeah. It's, like I said, in gunship rule, golden rule is, if when shooting, expect to be fired upon, so
Exactly.
definitely it's always in the back of your head.
Yeah. So what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to call it quit to today. You want to come back tomorrow, because I've got the next stories lined up here. This is good stuff. If you're into what goes on in a war zone, in a battle zone, you've never been in one, domestically or foreign, you want to hear about this stuff. So come back and join us again tomorrow for part 2. Anthony is gracious enough to give us another hour of his time at least, and we're going to talk more about his book. Just real quickly, you can find this, Moonchild. You'll be able to find it on Amazon. You'll be able to go to the Game of Crimes podcast website, click on the book section, and there'll be a direct link there to take you to his book if you're interested in buying that. We're going to talk more about the book tomorrow. So come back then. In the meantime, God bless you all. Be safe out there.